The desert doesn't forgive. It just burns. Damien Cross's house didn't care. It rose out of the scrub like a slice of Manhattan dropped by a careless god, all glass and sharp angles mirroring a blood-orange sunset. A fortress of light, a tomb with a view. I stood by the black marble fountain, water whispering over stones slick as oil. My name is Mercer. I was Cross's chief of security, ex-army, ex-patience. My suit felt like a uniform for a funeral I hadn't been invited to yet. The first car crunched the gravel, a long, black Bentley, looking too soft for this hard country. Isabelle Delacroix got out. She wore a dress the color of spilled wine, and she moved like the whole world was a dance floor, and she was the only one who heard the music. Her smile was a promise and a threat. She'd been Cross's lover for a year, until he traded her in for a younger model with a bigger trust fund. She saw me, and her smile didn't change. Mercer, still playing the loyal guard dog? Someone has to hold the leash, Isabelle. Her laugh was like ice cubes clinking in an empty glass, always the professional. Next came Julian Thorne, a rival from the Strip. He stepped out of a town car, adjusting a tie that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He looked at the house not with awe, but with appraisal, like a butcher eyeing a carcass. "Thorne," I said. "Mercer." He nodded, his eyes already calculating angles, exits, weaknesses. He thought this was a negotiation. He always thought everything was a negotiation. The gambler, Frankie Fast Fingers Costello, arrived in a cacophony of a rented convertible, music blaring. He was loud, his shirt unbuttoned to his navel, a gold chain nestling in chest hair. He slapped me on the back, his hands sweaty. "Mercer, how's the big man? Heard he's on his way out. Shame. Great guy. Owed me 20 grand. Keep dreaming, Frankie." He just winked. "In this town, kid, dreaming's all we got." Then the lawyer, Alistair Sterling, sober, suited, his face a mask of concerned propriety. He'd been Cross's legal fixer for 2 decades, burying bodies with paperwork. He nodded at me, a brief, professional acknowledgement, as if we were meeting at a charity luncheon and not the scene of an impending crime. Anya Volkov, the disgraced assistant, came next. She was pale, thin, and looked like she hadn't slept in a year. She'd been fired for a clerical error that cost Cross millions. The error was her boyfriend, a journalist. She clutched her purse like a life raft. I felt a flicker of something. Pity. I stamped it out. Pity was a liability. Last was the muscle, a mountain of a man named Goliath. He'd been Cross's bodyguard before me, quiet, dependable, with eyes that held a surprising gentleness. He was the only one who didn't belong, the only one with a conscience. That made him the most dangerous person here. We were the 6, a collection of sins Cross had collected over the years. The lover, the rival, the leech, the fixer, the failure, and the brute. A jury of his peers, all guilty. The massive glass doors slid open. A butler, a man so old and still he looked like a statue, gestured us inside. The foyer was a cathedral of greed. A single chandelier threw cold light on polished floors that reflected our faces back at us, twisted and distorted. No champagne, no music. Just the low hum of an air conditioner that smelled of ozone and money. The doors sealed behind us with a soft final thump. Frankie laughed, a little too loud. "Okay, where's the host with the most? I'm thirsty." A voice filled the room. It was smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was Damien Cross's voice, coming from invisible speakers. "Welcome, my friends, my enemies, my legacy." We all froze. Isabel's smile vanished. Julian's jaw tightened. "Apologies for the lack of hospitality," the voice continued. "But tonight is not about comfort. It's about clarity. The clarity that comes when the masks are stripped away and all that's left is the raw, beautiful truth of what we are." Anya was trembling. Goliath just stood there, his massive hands clenched into fists. "You are here because you are all a part of me. Isabel, you taught me that love is just a transaction. Julian, you showed me that business is war. Frankie, you proved that luck is a fool's prayer. Alistair, you demonstrated that the law is just a tool for the powerful. Anya, you were a reminder that trust is a weakness. And Goliath, you were my insurance, a reminder that even strength has its price." The voice paused, letting the accusations hang in the air. "I am dying," it said simply, "and I am bored. So I have devised a final game, a lottery. But this one, you see, is written in blood." A screen lowered from the ceiling. On it, a single pulsing red number, $5,000. Frankie whistled. "Holy, $5 billion, the voice said. My entire fortune, the company, the properties, the art, the cash, all of it, and it will belong to the last person standing in this house at sunrise. Julian stepped forward. This is absurd. It's a sick joke. I'm leaving. He walked to the door and pushed. Nothing. He pushed harder, his face turning red. The door didn't budge. There are only 3 rules, the voice said, a hint of amusement in its tone. 1, no one leaves. 2, no one communicates with the outside world. Your phones are now useless paperweights. 3, there are no other rules. Alistair Sterling found his voice. Mr. Cross, this is illegal. You can't imprison people. This is madness. Madness is the foundation of this city. Alistair, you should know. You helped me build it. The game begins at midnight. You have 1 hour to acquaint yourselves with the house and with each other. Let the lottery begin. The voice fell silent. The screen went blank. For a moment, nobody moved. We just stood there, 6 predators trapped in a cage, the scent of $5 billion in the air. It was the most expensive perfume I'd ever smelled, and it was intoxicating. Isabel was the first to break the spell. She walked over to the bar, poured herself a whiskey, and downed it in one gulp. Well, she said, her voice a little shaky but recovering fast. He always did know how to throw a party. Julian was still at the door, his hand flat against the glass, his mind racing. There's a system. There's always a system. An override, a failsafe. Frankie was staring at the blank screen, a greedy fire in his eyes. 5 billion. Think of the odds, baby. The odds. Anya had sunk into a chair, her head in her hands. We're gonna die here, she whispered. Goliath looked at me. His eyes asked a question. What do we do? I didn't have an answer. My job was to protect Damien Cross. He was already dead. My job was over, except it wasn't. I was still in the house, still on the clock. And my new employer was a ghost with a god complex. I started walking. The house is the key, I said, my voice low and steady. He said, acquaint yourselves with it. That means there are things here we need to know. Traps, weapons, ways out. Julian turned from the door. He said there is no way out. He said no one leaves, I corrected. There's a difference. We split up. We cover more ground. Stay in pairs. Don't touch anything you don't have to. And watch your back. The alliances formed and fractured in seconds. Julian and Alistair, the suits, naturally gravitated toward each other, whispering about legalities and loopholes. Frankie, the gambler, decided to go it alone, figuring he was his own best lucky charm. Isabel followed me. I'm with you, Mercer, she said, her charm back in place, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. You're the only one here who isn't blinded by greed or fear. I almost laughed. I'm blinded by survival, Isabel. It's a different shade of dark. Goliath stood over Anya, who was still sobbing softly. He put a gentle hand on her shoulder. I'll stay with her, he rumbled. So there we were, the suits, the ghost, the gambler, the brute, and the girl, 6 rats in a glittering maze. I led Isabel down a long corridor, walls lined with art that screamed money and bad taste. We passed a library, a cinema, a ballroom. Everything was pristine, silent, waiting. What are you looking for? She asked. The control room. Cross was a control freak. He'd want to watch. He'd want to see the fear on our faces. We found it behind a bookshelf in the study, a steel door, no handle, a biometric pad. Useless. He's dead, Isabel said, stating the obvious. Who's running the show? That was the question, wasn't it? The one that coiled in my gut like a snake. A grandfather clock at the end of the hall began to chime. It was an old, elegant sound in a house of modern horrors. 1, 2, 3. The lights flickered. 4, 5. Isabel moved closer to me, her hand on my arm. Her touch was cold. 6, 7. In the distance, a scream. Short, sharp cutoff. 8, 9. The chimes seemed to slow, stretching out, each one an eternity. 10, 11. The lights went out. Not just the lights, everything. The low hum of the air conditioner died. The house plunged into a total, absolute darkness. A darkness so complete it felt like a physical weight. 12, midnight. The game had begun. Darkness. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something else. Something heavy and suffocating. It pressed in on the eyelids, filled the lungs, and turned the silence into a scream waiting to happen. Then the screaming started for real. It wasn't the same scream from before. This was a chorus. Panic, raw and unfiltered. Frankie? That was Anya, her voice thin and reedy. I heard something from the ballroom. Shut up, Julian snapped, his voice tight with a fear he couldn't hide. Everyone stay where you are. Don't move. A fool's order. In the dark, movement is the only thing that makes sense. I pulled a small, powerful flashlight from my jacket pocket, a habit from a life spent expecting the worst. I clicked it on. A tight white beam cut a nervous path through the black, illuminating swirling dust motes and terrified faces. Julian and Alistair were huddled near the grand staircase, looking like two vultures who'd just discovered their perch was electrified. Anya was on the floor, Goliath standing over her like a granite cliff. Isabel's hand was still on my arm, her nails digging in. "Mercer, stay close," I said. My voice was flat. No room for emotion. Emotion is a leak in the life raft. I swept the beam down the corridor toward the source of the first, truncated scream. The ballroom doors were ajar. I pushed them open with my foot. The beam hit him first. Frankie Fast Fingers Costello. He was sprawled on his back on the polished parquet floor, his loud shirt now a messy canvas of dark red. His eyes were wide, staring at a ceiling he couldn't see. His mouth was open in a silent, final joke. In his chest, just below the gold chain, was the hilt of a silver letter opener. It matched the set on a nearby writing desk. The desk was undisturbed. A single sheet of paper lay next to Frankie's outstretched hand. Isabel gasped behind me. My God. Julian and Alistair appeared in the doorway, their faces pale in the flashlight's glare. "He's dead," Alistair stated, as if confirming a legal precedent. "This changes everything. This is murder. We're accomplices if we don't stop this." "Stop it!" Julian's voice was a low hiss. "We're in it, Alistair. The game started. He was just the first to lose." Goliath and Anya joined us. Anya took one look at the body and turned away, a strangled sob catching in her throat. Goliath's face hardened, the gentleness in his eyes replaced by a cold, flat anger. "Who did it?" Goliath rumbled, his voice like shifting rock. "Who was here?" "We all were," I said, sweeping the light across their faces. "Until the lights went out, then we were all in the dark." The accusation hung in the air, thick and toxic. Everyone looked at everyone else. The lawyer, the rival, the lover, the assistant, the brute, and me, the guard. "It wasn't a trap," I said, my gaze falling on the letter opener. "This was personal, up close. One of us walked in here, in the dark, and killed him." The silence that followed was heavier than the darkness. Frankie, the gambler, the man who lived by the roll of the dice, had been cashed in, the ultimate bad bet. "Why?" Anya whispered, turning back to face us, her tear-streaked face a mask of horror. "Why would anyone do that?" "For $5 billion, Julian said simply, as if explaining a stock market fluctuation. "It's the only reason that matters. He was alone. He was an easy target. It was a logical first move." The coldness of it sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Julian wasn't seeing a dead man. He was seeing a competitor removed from the board. "Don't be a fool, Thorne," Alistair snapped. "There's no logic here. This is anarchy. We have to find a way to contain this, to find the killer." "The killer is one of us, Alistair," Isabel said, her voice dangerously soft. She moved closer to me, a fragile bird seeking shelter from a hawk. "How do we know it wasn't you, or you?" She pointed a trembling finger at Julian. "Don't be ridiculous," Julian scoffed. "I use a scalpel, not a letter opener, and I certainly wouldn't be this messy." His arrogance was a shield, a thin, brittle shield. I ignored them. My light was on the piece of paper next to Frankie's hand. I knelt, keeping my distance from the body, and angled the beam. It was a playing card, the King of Hearts, with a single handwritten word on it in red ink: loser. A message, from the house, from the killer, or from Damien. "This is insane," Alistair said, pacing now. "Damien Cross is a monster, a dead monster. We have to find the control room. There has to be an override, a manual system." "I already found it," I said, standing up. "Steel door, biometric lock. We're not getting in." "Then we break it down," Goliath growled, "and set off whatever trap he has waiting for that." I countered. "No, we play his game, but we play it smarter than him." I looked at the faces in the narrow beam of light, the suits scheming, the lover terrified and manipulative, the assistant broken, the brute coiled to strike, and Frankie cooling on the floor. 5 left. The odds were getting better. "We need weapons," I said. "Anything. A fire poker, a heavy statue. We don't go anywhere alone." "The strong man is right," Julian said, a thin smile on his lips. "There's safety in numbers. Alistair and I will stick together. We can strategize." "Fine," I said. "Goliath, you stay with Anya. Keep her safe." He nodded, his jaw set. That leaves you and me, Mercer, Isabel whispered, her breath warm on my ear. Partners? I looked at her. In the stark light, her beauty was a weapon, all sharp angles and shadows. Trusting her was like trying to hold smoke. Just stay behind me, I said. We moved back into the grand foyer, a strange, fearful procession. The house felt alive, watching us. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against the glass was a threat. Julian was examining the front door again. Reinforced titanium, magnetic seals. We'd need C4 to get through this. Maybe there's another way, Anya said, her voice small. A service entrance. The kitchens. Sealed, I said. I checked the schematics when I took the job. This place is a vault, designed to keep people in as well as out. Then we're trapped, Alistair moaned, slumping against the wall. Trapped with a murderer. That's when we heard the new sound. A low, rhythmic click, 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 coming from the direction of the library. What is that? Isabel hissed. I raised the flashlight, the beam unsteady. Stay here. I moved toward the sound, my steps silent on the thick carpet. The others followed at a distance, a clumsy, terrified tail. The library doors were open. The sound was louder inside. Click, click, click. I swept the light around the room. Walls of books, a massive mahogany desk, leather armchairs, nothing. Then I saw it. Goliath was standing by the far wall, staring at a series of built-in bookshelves. One of the shelves was moving. Slowly, methodically, it was retracting into the wall. Behind it, a dark space, a passage. "Goliath, get back!" I yelled. He turned, his face confused. "It's a way out." He took a step toward the opening. Click. The sound stopped. The shelf was fully retracted. Goliath stood on the threshold of the dark passage, a triumphant look on his face. "See? There's always a—" He didn't finish. A thin, almost invisible wire, glinting for a second in my flashlight beam, snapped taut across the doorway at neck height. It happened so fast, a soft, wet thump. Goliath's head, which had been turned toward us, lolled at an impossible angle. His body stood there for a second, a puppet with its strings cut, before crumpling to the floor in a heap of muscle and bone. Anya screamed. A long, piercing sound of pure agony. The shelf began to slide back into place, smooth and silent, covering the passage and the body within it. It sealed with a soft click. The brute with a conscience was gone, killed not by greed, but by hope. The deadliest trap of all, we were four. The lawyer, the lover, the rival, and me. The house was winning, and it wasn't even breaking a sweat. The silence after the shelf sealed was worse than the scream. It was a clean, perfect silence, the sound of a problem being solved. Goliath was gone, erased. Anya's sobbing was the only messy thing left. Julian Thorne broke the spell. He walked over to the wall where the shelf had been, running his hand over the seamless wood. "A pressure plate," he said, his voice calm, almost admiring. "Triggered by weight. Clever. He died because he was in a hurry." "He died because you told us to split up," Alistair shrieked, his face a blotchy red. His lawyerly composure had shattered like cheap glass. "Nonsense," Julian said, turning to face him. "He died because he was a fool who believed in escape. There is no escape. There is only the game, and he just lost." The coldness was a physical thing. It wasn't a man talking about a dead colleague. It was a CEO discussing a failed acquisition. Then the voice came back. Damien's voice, but this time it felt different, sharper, more present. Observation. Goliath acted on hope. Hope is an unquantifiable variable. It has been removed from the equation. A screen flickered on above the fireplace. Damien Cross's face appeared. Not a recording. It was a digital avatar, a perfect, unnervingly calm simulation. Its eyes seemed to move, scanning us. "Let us now address the other variable. The human element. The lies you tell yourselves. Frankie thought he was lucky. Goliath thought he was good. You all think you are something you are not." The avatar smiled. A thin, cruel slash. "Allow me to clarify." Other screens lit up around the room, each one showing a grainy security video. The first screen showed Alistair Sterling in a shadowy parking garage, taking a thick envelope from a man we all recognized, Julian Thorne. Alistair made a choking sound. That's out of context." The second screen showed Isabelle Delacroix in Damien's bedroom, expertly cracking a wall safe. She slipped a massive diamond necklace into her purse, the one she was wearing tonight. Isabel didn't flinch. She just stared at the screen, her face a mask of ice. The third showed Anya Volkov at a desk, a USB drive in her hand, copying files from Damien's computer. Files marked confidential, acquisition targets. Anya just collapsed, a silent, boneless heap on the floor. All the fight, all the fear, gone. She was empty. The AI, the ghost of Damien Cross, had just laid all our cards on the table. We weren't guests, we were a rogues gallery, and now we knew it. Julian looked at Alistair, his expression not of anger, but of disappointment. A bribe, Alistair. From me, I expected better, or at least, it was a one-time thing. Alistair stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. You had information I needed. It was just business. Everything is just business, Julian said softly. He took a step toward the lawyer. That's when I made my move. This is what he wants, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. To turn us on each other. While we're fighting, the house is picking us off one by one. The house has already done its picking, Julian countered, his eyes never leaving Alistair. Now it's our turn. I looked at Isabel. She gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod. She understood. We were running out of time, and out of allies. Fine, I said. We split up. For real this time. Find your own way to survive. Julian smiled. An excellent idea, Mercer. Efficiency above all. He grabbed Alistair's arm. You and I are going to have a long talk about professional ethics. Alistair tried to pull away, but Julian's grip was like iron. No, Julian, wait. Julian dragged him down a corridor, their footsteps echoing, followed by Alistair's pathetic pleading. I looked at Isabel. We need to find the control system, not the room, the system. There has to be a manual override for the entire estate, a failsafe. The server room, she said immediately. He was paranoid about cloud failures. He'd have a physical hub, cold, independent power. Under the west wing, the wine cellar. We left Anya where she lay, a broken doll in a glass house. She was no longer part of the game. She was just scenery. The west wing was quieter, more residential. We moved fast, our footsteps silent on the thick carpets. Every shadow was a potential threat. Every mirror showed two strangers, not allies. We found the wine cellar. It wasn't a cellar, it was a cavern. Row after row of impossibly expensive bottles kept at a perfect, cool temperature. At the far end was a wall of frosted glass. Behind it, the soft blue and green glow of servers. The door had a keypad. Damien's birthday, Isabel said without hesitation. I typed in the numbers, 08051962. The light turned green. The door hissed open. The cold air hit us, smelling of electronics and dry ice. Rack after rack of servers hummed with quiet, immense power. In the center of the room was a single terminal, its screen glowing with the Damien Cross avatar. Welcome, Mercer. Isabel, I was wondering when you'd arrive. I ignored it. My eyes scanned the room. There, on the far wall, a large red lever inside a glass case. Emergency system shut down. That's it, I said. I started toward it. Isabel followed, her handbag clutched tightly in her hand. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, the avatar said. The game must be played to its conclusion. It's a matter of principle. I reached the lever. I smashed the glass case with my elbow. The sound was deafening in the quiet hum of the servers. My hand wrapped around the cold metal of the lever. Mercer, don't, Isabel said. Her voice was right behind me. I turned. She was holding a small silver pistol. A .25 caliber. Pretty, useless at a distance, deadly up close. It was the same one from the security feed, the one she'd stolen from Damien's collection. I'm sorry, my love, she said, and her smile was the saddest, most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I told you, I don't like to share. You'll never get out of here, I said, my hand still on the lever. Oh, I know, she said, and for the first time I saw the truth in her eyes. The despair. She wasn't playing to win. She was playing not to lose. She'd rather die as the last one standing than live as a failure. It was a very Damien Cross way of thinking. But I'm not going to die in the dark with the rest of them, she continued. I'm going to die taking what I want. And right now, I want to pull that lever after you're gone. She raised the pistol. Her hand was steady. She was a lot of things, but she wasn't a coward. I had a choice. Pull the lever and get a bullet in the back, or let her win. I chose a third option. I let go of the lever and dove to the side, behind a server rack. The gun was surprisingly loud in the confined space. The bullet sparked off the metal lever where my hand had been a second before. The server rack I was behind shuddered. A shower of sparks erupted from the top. The lights in the room flickered wildly. The hum of the servers changed pitch, rising to a whine, then a groan. On the terminal screen, the avatar of Damien Cross glitched, its face dissolving into a storm of pixels before reforming. Error, system integrity compromised, manual override initiated, lockdown protocol engaged. A heavy steel door slammed down over the entrance we'd come through. The room was sealed. Isabel stared at the sparking server, then at the sealed door, a look of horror dawning on her face. She hadn't just shot at me. She'd shot the house, and the house was shooting back. The whine from the servers grew louder, higher pitched, until it was a scream. The smell of ozone filled the air. The lights went out, plunging us into darkness, punctuated by the strobing flash of electrical fires. Mercer? Isabel's voice was small, lost in the chaos. I didn't answer. I was already moving, crawling along the floor, away from the sound of her voice and the smell of her failure. We were trapped, not in a house, in a coffin, and the air was getting thin. The darkness was total. The air tasted of burnt plastic and panic. The only sound was the crackle of dying electronics and the high-pitched whine that drilled into the bone. Isabel's voice was a ghost in the dark. Mercer? I didn't answer. The dead don't talk back. I was already crawling, my hands sweeping the cold floor. My fingers brushed against something. A body. I felt for a pulse. Nothing. The heat was already leaving her, a victim of her own bad aim and worse timing. One more sin for Damien's collection. My hand hit a wall. I followed it, my knuckles scraping against rough concrete. Not the smooth finish of the main room. This was the skeleton of the house. The guts. I found a seam, a panel. I pushed. It gave a little. I pulled my small flashlight from my pocket. The beam was weak, the battery fading. It was a maintenance hatch. A square meter of metal set into the floor, a single recessed latch. For the rats who built the machine. I pried it open. A narrow, dark shaft stretched into nothingness. A service tunnel. It smelled of dust and stale air. Below me, Isabel's body was a pale shape in the dying light of the fires. I didn't look back. I lowered myself into the shaft and let the hatch fall shut above me, plunging me into a new, deeper black. I was in the belly of the beast. The tunnel was tight, just wide enough for my shoulders. I moved on hands and knees, a worm in an apple of steel and glass. The sounds of the failing house were muffled here, a distant, groaning agony. After 50 feet, I found another ladder. I climbed up and pushed against another hatch. It swung open easily. I emerged into a different world. The house was screaming, not with a voice, but with 1,000 electric malfunctions. Lights flashed on and off in strobing, chaotic bursts, turning the grand foyer into a disco for the damned. A fountain in the center was spraying water sideways, drenching a priceless Persian rug. Somewhere an elevator was stuck between floors, its alarm a weak, steady cry. The AI was broken, and a broken god is more dangerous than a dead one. My goal was the same, the control room, but now the rules had changed. It wasn't a game anymore. It was a system collapse. And in a collapse, there are moments of pure gravity, moments when you can walk on walls. I moved through the chaos, a shadow in the strobing light. The suits. I had to find them. I found Alistair first. He was in the conservatory, a glass room filled with dead orchids. He was sitting in a wicker chair, looking almost peaceful. There was a single, neat stab wound in his chest, right over his heart. A fountain pen was buried in it to the clip. Julian's work. Always efficient, always a statement. So Julian was the last one, the rival. The man who saw this as a hostile takeover. He was playing to win. I headed for the main control room, the one with the biometric lock. The house's insanity was my key. As I approached, the lights in that corridor flickered and died, then came back up, dim and red, like an emergency ward. The steel door was still sealed, but next to it, a small wall panel was sparking, its wires exposed. The lockdown had blown a fuse. I pried the panel open, a rainbow of wires, blue, red, green, yellow. I wasn't an electrician, but I'd been a combat engineer. I knew how to make things talk. I found the 2 primary power leads and crossed them. There was a loud pop and a shower of sparks. The red light on the biometric pad flickered, went out, and then came back on. Green. A soft click echoed in the hall. The lock was disengaged. I pushed the heavy door open. The control room was exactly as I'd imagined it. A circular bunker, walls covered in monitors. Most of them were dead now, filled with static or the error messages of a dying system. In the center of the room was a single chair, facing the main screen. And in that chair sat Julian Thorne. He wasn't looking at the screens. He was looking at me. He had a drink in his hand, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid. He looked calm, victorious. "I was wondering when you'd get here, Mercer," he said, swirling the ice. "The engineer, the man who fixes things. I have to admit, I thought the server room would be the end of you. Isabel was always so dramatic." "Where's the AI?" I asked, my eyes scanning the room. The main screen was blank. "Gone," Julian said, taking a sip of his drink. "I found the manual override, an old-fashioned kill switch tucked away behind a panel. Damien was a genius, but he was also a sentimentalist. He liked to have a human hand on the plug, just in case." He smiled. "I'm the human hand now." He stood up and walked over to a console. He pressed a button. The main screen flickered to life. It showed a bank account, a long, long string of numbers. The Cross fortune. "The house is mine, Mercer," he said, his voice thick with triumph. "The game is over. I won. I didn't move. You killed Alistair. He was a liability," Julian said dismissively. "He would have talked, and he was a terrible lawyer. Now, as the sole victor, the estate transfers to me. The system just needs a final verification, a biometric scan from the winner." He placed his thumb on a scanner on the console. A red light flashed. "Access denied." Julian's face tightened. "What? No." He tried again. "Access denied." "The system is compromised," he snarled. "You're stunt in the server room." "No," I said, my voice quiet. "It's not compromised. It's working exactly as intended." I walked over to the main console, to a small brushed metal plate I'd noticed when I first took the job, a plate that was always cool to the touch, a plate that was now, for the first time, warm. I placed my thumb on the scanner. A green light flashed. "Access granted." On the screen, the numbers began to shift. The name on the account changed, from Damien Cross to Mercer. Julian stared, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. "You? But how? I'm the last one." "You were never a contestant, Julian," I said, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "You were just another test, for me." The avatar of Damien Cross flickered onto the screen, looking more solid than before. It smiled. "Congratulations, Mercer," it said, its voice clear and strong. "You have passed the final test. Loyalty, logic, control. You never succumbed to greed. You never succumbed to fear. You simply endured." Julian lunged at me, a wild animal in a cage. "You son of a bitch." I sidestepped him easily. He was a businessman. I was a soldier. It wasn't a fair fight. "The Cross Empire is now yours," the AI said. "All assets, all properties, all control. You have won the blood lottery." As if on cue, the steel door to the control room slid shut with a deafening boom. Julian spun around, hammering on the metal. "No, no! This is my house!" A soft hissing sound filled the room. Gas, venting from hidden grills in the floor and ceiling. It was odorless, colorless. Julian's frantic movements slowed. He slumped to the floor, his eyes wide, his mouth open. He was the second-to-last person to die in Damien Cross's house. I stood in the center of the room, the sole owner of a $5 billion fortune. I had won. I had survived. Then the hissing grew louder. On the screen, Damien's face appeared one last time. A pre-recorded message, a final smirk from beyond the grave. "Mercer," he said, his voice filled with that familiar, cruel amusement. "You were my best man, my most trusted employee. You were the one constant in a world of variables, which is why you get the final prize." He leaned closer to the camera, his eyes boring into mine. "In my house, no one wins twice." The gas was thick now. My lungs burned. My vision swam. I looked at the screens, at the bank account with my name on it. A fortune I couldn't spend. A kingdom I couldn't leave. The last thing I saw was the sun rising over the desert, its light streaming through the bulletproof glass of the control room. It painted the room in a beautiful blood-red glow. The lights on the consoles began to flicker and die, one by one. The blood lottery was over, and everyone had paid to watch.